Acting Attorney General Sally Yates told lawmakers yesterday that she requested a meeting with the White House in late January to alert them that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had lied about his conversations with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. Yates told the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee the misinformation was inadvertently being passed on to the press by Vice President Mike Pence and other administration officials speaking on Flynn's behalf.
We felt like the vice president was entitled to know that the information he had been given and that he was relaying to the American public wasn't true.
So what you're saying is that General Flynn lied to the vice president.
That's certainly how it appeared, yes, because the vice president went out and made statements about General Flynn's conduct that he said were based on what General Flynn had told him. And we knew that that just flat wasn't true.
Also gave White House counsel Don McGahn materials the Justice Department had collected on Flynn that validated their conclusions. She says she expected the administration to take action against Flynn given he had undermined his position as a national security advisor to the president.
Not only did we believe that the Russians knew this, but that they likely had proof of this information. And that created a compromise situation, a situation where the national security advisor essentially could be blackmailed by the Russians.
President Trump eventually fired Flynn 18 days. Yes, he waited 18 days after after Yates gave the White House that warning. But the president said he saw no wrongdoing on Flynn's part, but fired him because he lied to Vice President Pence. In fact, he even called it a witch hunt going after Mike Flynn. Also, new revelations that 2 days before the election, President Barack Obama warned President-elect Trump, in the session where he was teaching him how to be president, that Flynn was bad news. Now remember, Obama fired Flynn as the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency in 2014 for mismanagement. Check this out, y'all. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer attributed Obama's warning as nothing more than bad blood.
It's true that President Obama made it known that he wasn't exactly a fan of General Flynn's, which is frankly shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, that given that General Flynn had worked for President Obama, was an outspoken critic of President Obama's shortcomings, specifically as it related to his lack of strategy confronting ISIS and other threats around that were facing America. So the question that you have to ask yourself really is, if President Obama was truly concerned about General Flynn, why didn't he suspend General Flynn's security clearance, which they had just reapproved months earlier?
Well, let's also keep in mind, Sean, that your boss hired Flynn to be National Security Advisor. And when you become National Security Advisor, it's an even more tougher security clearance than it was when he was previously there. So why don't y'all accept some blame, because you hired Glenn to be your National Security Advisor. Mm-hmm. Trump also tweeted this yesterday, folks. You're gonna love this one here. Sally Yates made the fake media extremely unhappy today. She said nothing but old news. No, but it was new to a lot of us who hadn't heard the news. And then check this out. He then tweeted, "The Russia-Trump collusion story is a total hoax. When will this taxpayer-funded charade end?" Let's see here. Carter Page, Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort. Shall we go on? Those are real investigations. But doesn't it sound like the president is trying to get in the way? We call that obstruct justice of an ongoing FBI investigation into this very hoax. Okay, y'all, check this out. He then tweets this here. Biggest story today between Clapper and Yates is on surveillance. Why doesn't the media report on this? Hashtag fake news. No, how about hashtag fake tweeting? Y'all, but let me tell you how bad this is. Tell you how bad this is, okay? Let me pull this up. It's so bad that Donald Trump, even for a while there, changed the header on his Twitter feed. Now, this is his personal account right here. So you see that header? Okay, so let me change it right now. So that's that header. But then Donald Trump decided to change the header on the actual POTUS page. So this is here. So here's what he did. The old header, he was quoting y'all, Clapper, as clearing him on the Russia stuff. That was a lie. Flat out lie. So now all of a sudden Trump has changed it back. Folks, this is why we use the hashtag Trump Lies Matter on this show, because we have a flat out lying president sitting in the Oval Office who will lie at the drop of a hat. Let's break this thing down with former federal prosecutor Glenn Ivey, partner at Leftwich and Littleworth Law Firm. Also on the panel, Michelle Hudgens, communication strategist. Brandon Cooper, chairman, Prince George's County Republican Party. Avis Jones DeWeaver, leadership strategist and author of How Exceptional Black Women Lead. You hear the phrase, you know, the word dramatic testimony, Glenn, but that was real. I think what happened yesterday really gave you an indication that you might not want to mess with Sally Yates.
Yeah, she was very impressive. I thought she did an outstanding job during her testimony. I thought it was interesting, you know, Trump sort of criticizing these investigations, but this is a Republican-led Senate committee that called her to testify and gave her the opportunity to put this information out. And I thought it raised a lot of issues that go to what other investigations are ongoing, potentially criminal investigations with respect to Flynn and others in the Trump administration. Well,
and here's a woman who said, "Look, we found the information. We went to the White House to warn them." They tried to say, "Oh no, she just dropped by for a heads up." I think what you heard from her was a lot more definitive than a heads up.
Especially the callback. So she came on day one and sort of gives them this information. Then they call her back the next day and ask for more details. So it's clear that they were, it was much more than a heads up, and they were concerned by what she'd said. It's also clear, though, they really didn't know what to do with the information, and then kept Flynn around for another 18 days, even though she made it clear he'd been compromised.
But they didn't want to do with the information. The only reason he got fired is because the Washington Post reported on what she told him. And then yesterday, all you heard yesterday were Republicans asking the questions about, did you leak? Let's talk about a travel ban. And in fact, y'all, okay, this was manna from heaven. Okay. So Senator Ted Cruz, who is beyond arrogant, okay, who wants to believe he's the smartest person in the room, he actually tried to jam up Sally Yates. Thoroughly embarrassed. Please enjoy this.
My favorite.
By the express text of the statute, it says, quote, whenever the president finds that the entry of any alien or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may, by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem appropriate. Would you agree that that is broad statutory authorization?
I would, and I am familiar with that, and I'm also familiar with an additional provision of the INA that says no person shall receive preference or be discriminated against in issuance of a visa because of race, nationality, or place of birth. That, I believe, was promulgated after the statute that you just quoted. And that's been part of the discussion with the courts with respect to the INA, is whether this more specific statute trumps the first one that you just described. But my concern was not an INA concern here. It rather was a constitutional concern.
Okay, it got better. And again, as a native Texan, I'm absolutely embarrassed because she embarrassed both Texas senators on yesterday. Check out Senator John Cornyn, the former Attorney General of Texas, get the ish smacked out of him by Sally Yates.
Distinguished career for 27 years at the Department of Justice, and I voted for your confirmation because I believe that you had a distinguished career. But I have to tell you that I find it enormously disappointing that you somehow vetoed the decision of the Office of Legal Counsel with regard to the lawfulness of the President's order and decided instead that you would countermand the executive order of the President of the United States because you happen to disagree with it as a policy matter.
Well, it wasn't.
I just have to say that.
I appreciate that, Senator, and let me make one thing clear. It was not purely as a policy matter. And in fact, I remember my confirmation hearing in an exchange that I had with you and others of your colleagues where you specifically asked me in that hearing that if the president asked me to do something that was unlawful or unconstitutional, and one of your colleagues said, or even just that would reflect poorly on the Department of Justice, would I say no? And I looked at this, I made a determination that I believed that it was unlawful. I also thought that it was inconsistent with the principles of the Department of Justice, and I said no, and that's what I promised you I would do, and that's what I did.
I don't know how you can say that it was lawful and say that it was within your prerogative to refuse to defend it in a court of law and leave it for the court to decide.
Senator, I did not say it was lawful. I said it was unlawful.
Just, Brandon, as a Republican, you had to just be embarrassed. How she just thoroughly embarrassed.
No, I think, like you
your
said,
party yesterday.
They have not been able to take responsibility for this issue. I think that's a large part they're trying to deflect, and I think that's where they're getting caught up and trying to deflect from the issue. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Anyways, it was brutal to sit there and watch, and she's kind of like, really?
I was there with my popcorn, just all in it. All in it. And what's interesting about it is how did we even get here to be even talking about the travel ban? This hearing was supposed to be on Russian interference,
right?
And they want to talk about everything else except Russian interference, and they still got smacked down.
But it was also something that they requested because they said if they have anything, they should bring it forward. Let's have a hearing. Let's have testimony. So they got it, and now they don't want it.
Well, and again, though, what is interesting in terms of watching this, you know, they're trying to educate her on the law, but I'm sitting there, Glenn, how are you going to sit here and say, well, you know, I'm disappointed that, you know, you did that to the president? And she said, I'm sorry, but didn't you ask me to do that? let me remind you what you said to me about that. Yeah, right. You specifically.
Right.
Yeah, and they did that with a lot of the Obama appointees. The Republicans did because they were trying to push them in the direction of challenging President Obama on a variety of issues that came up before the Department of Justice. So it's funny to see it turned against them in this way. And I thought she was just phenomenal in the testimony she gave yesterday.
Well, and also, again, you know, you're trying to, and then here's what gets me. So after it's over, I flipped to Fox News. Totally delusional television. And Eric Bolin is just going crazy. And they're like, well, I think Sally Yates and her office leaked it to the Washington Post, and they were like, you know, she was asked that under oath, and she completely denied it. But what gets me is how they're trying to frame how, oh, she was an Obama appointee. First of all, she was hired by ultra-conservative Bob Barr at the Department of Justice. Worked under Republican presidents, worked under Democratic presidents. It's a little hard, Brandon, to try to brand her as some wild lefty appointed by Obama when she's a career prosecutor who's been nonpartisan, who was hired by a ultra right-wing Republican.
And again, let me say this. She started off as a career politician, but she did eventually become an appointee and a partisan appointee.
Hold on.
She did start as a career politician.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Is Comey a Republican?
I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sure.
And who appointed him to be FBI director?
No, yeah, Obama appointed him as well. They do both sides.
But here's my whole point. Yeah. Is Bob Gates a Republican?
Yes, yeah.
Was he appointed Secretary of Defense?
Yeah, I'm not debating
Is William Cohen a Republican? Was he appointed Secretary of Defense by Bill Clinton?
Definitely.
So here's my whole point.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you get appointed by a Democrat president. If you still are a Republican or you're a nonpartisan person, you simply got tapped for that.
Oh, no, I agree, but you're trying to say that she's a nonpartisan president.
No, that's not. Actually, she is.
She was not when she.
Okay, hold on.
Again, she was appointed.
Okay, let me say it again.
Yeah.
Just because you are appointed.
I agree with that.
Brandon,
I agree with that.
Brandon.
I agree with that.
Just because you're appointed by the president does not mean that you're partisan.
I agree with that.
What it means is that the president simply chose you to be number 2 in the Department of Justice.
I agree with that.
But my problem is when they want to say, oh, Obama appointee, as if a right-wing Bob Barr, later congressman, was not the one who hired her
to a career position. I agree. I'm agreeing with you.
I'm just saying.
But just to clear the point, she was an appointee at the time of this happened. So let's just, say you're trying to say she's a career politician.
No.
Career
but she's not.
Employee. She was when she first hired, but she transformed into an appointee.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just pointing out. I'm not. But I agree with you.
Glenn, you work there. Go ahead.
Yeah.
She was a career prosecutor, and I think the line that's usually drawn not only within the Department of Justice but outside is who spent their time there working their way up, trying to be nonpartisan and neutral in making these prosecutorial decisions. She clearly fits that mold. Now, she became an appointee later on.
The same woman who was the U.S. Attorney General there in Georgia who prosecuted Bill Campbell, Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, but she was a career
I'm not
prosecutor
saying that
for
she's,
sure. And so to challenge her on, and they tried, as you saw,
Didn't work.
on legal, and she blew them out of the water. So I think those are weak arguments, and I think that's why they ended up trying to shift things to anything else.
But what did come out of the hearing yesterday was any substance as far as this Trump collusion. Again, I know this is something that's been going on since last year.
Let me ask you a question.
But there has been no wrongdoing of evidence.
Did Comey testify last week that there's an ongoing investigation?
Yeah, there's ongoing, but okay.
So, Brandon.
I understand.
Okay, Brandon, let me help you out. Let me help you out how this thing works.
Yes.
You're not going to see evidence of collusion when there's an ongoing investigation.
Okay.
What you don't do in an ongoing, you can help me on this one, Glenn.
Yeah.
When you have an ongoing investigation, what you don't do is reveal your evidence until your investigation.
I am agreeing with you. No, all I'm saying we're waiting for that to come. If it does come, it may come.
But you tried to say, well, we didn't see this.
No. I'm saying it seems that a lot of the narrative has been that it's jumped to the conclusion that this has happened.
No, hold up. I'm sorry. But
just like Clinton's investigation is still ongoing. Ultimately, she was cleared of any charges.
But we do have still ongoing. But we do have Carter Page and Manafort and Flynn getting the $37,000 and then getting $500,000 from the Turkish guy as well, never revealing the information. All I'm saying is this here, it's a joke to think that you're going to find out the information when it's still an ongoing investigation.
I'm saying it's still an ongoing investigation, but some people, it seems that maybe not on this panel, but people are jumping to the conclusion as if something has been found. There's nothing been found yet. It's still an ongoing investigation.
In the words of Huggy Lowdown from Time to the Morning Show, wait for it! A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not gonna let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally.
What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.